Success for me is now defined by how many people I can touch and inspire every day. And I've drawn from my grandparents' story and watching my parents and my own 25-year career in law and banking and more to recognize that no matter what, if we apply what I call the RISE process, we can get through anything. So in April 2014, I was indicted for 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 24 counts of bank fraud. I had made some bad decisions. The judge sentenced me to 1 year and a day in prison. I then spent 5 months in Coleman, which is about an hour north of Orlando, but I'm voluntarily choosing to go to county jail. Why? Because my attorney says that if I testify in this other case, there's a chance I could come home early. And so I walk into this cube, and above me was a prostitute heroin dealer, and next to me was a homeless person who had been selling drugs, and above her, a 24-year-old meth dealer with a 4-year-old at home. And I spent 23 days cooking, eating, praying, crying, getting them to work out with me. And I learned, how dare I pass judgment on these women? Because but for the grace of God, there go I. And we are all drops from the same ocean. So one night, we were watching a movie, and so the movie Burlesque comes on. And then we go back to our cube, and one of the girls says, "Hey, don't you know how to Bollywood dance?" And we dance with women I was passing judgment with, yet I found they were my sisters. I've healed, and more people are learning and benefiting from this courageous process that I went through, that I didn't even realize I was going through at the time. All we have to do is reframe, identify, surrender, and evolve, and recognize that they're not in it alone, that not only are they there for each other, but we're all here for them, and that they can rise together. That's the legacy I can live with. Thank you so much. I'm Rashmi Airan. So yes, I follow my path. I go to UNC Chapel Hill. I graduate with highest honors. I went on to Wall Street at Morgan Stanley. And then I went to Columbia Law School. And yes, graduated top of my class. And so by all accounts, I've got this life thing figured out. Like, things are good. My parents are proud of me. People in India are proud of me. My community is proud of me. I marry a firefighter. He works for the city of Miami. And we had these 2 beautiful children. But I can tell you that at this time, I had started my own law practice. I don't even remember taking this picture. Right? Like, aren't they so yummy? But at that point in my life, I was rushing to every possible networking event, hustling, selling my services at the gym. I started having marital problems. My kids started asking me, "Mom, are you coming home?" And you see, I was just trying to get to the next goal. And I was spending so much time and running around this race course of life, trying to get to the next goal, that I forgot that I actually was doing all of this for them. And I wasn't even enjoying it. Have any of you ever taken a picture like you're like, when did I take that picture? Because see, I felt pressure. And it's not that anybody was putting pressure on me. But as women, as mothers, don't we put pressure on ourselves? Right, like I had to get the client. I had to make the money. I had to take care of my kids. I had to get to my daughter's volleyball game, to my son's basketball game. Like, we're juggling so many things. And sometimes we don't even realize we're putting all that pressure on ourselves. And here's the thing. I had spent my entire life believing that the only reason people loved me and all of my self-esteem and self-worth was rooted in achievement. So I kept having to achieve to feel any sort of self-value. How many of you have ever felt pressure? Legal, marital, medical? You got 2 up over here. Okay. I need to hear that story. Right? Like, we all face it. And we as women are not strangers to this. But you see, I had created a self-imposed prison of glass walls around me that I didn't even know was there. And it looked like overwhelm, stress, burnout, anxiety, uncertainty, status quo. Like, status quo is just comfortable. I just wanted to stay in this box. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Like, you don't even know you're trying to do all these things, like, yet you still do them? Of course we do, right? Because we're all trying to wear all these hats. So it's in this context when my kids are 2 and 3 that I had the opportunity to meet a real estate developer. Now, it's 2007. You guys remember 2007? Yeah. It was the heyday of real estate. The market here in South Florida is booming. And I'm struggling, right? Like, I'm trying to make ends meet. And somebody says, hey, do you want to meet a real estate developer? And I'm like, yes. If I could just get that one big client, that means volume business, which means financial stability, which means more time with my kids. So I jumped at the opportunity. I remember I went into his office. It was in North Miami Beach. And I walked into a conference room where the developer himself sat in a side office. And his 2 right-hand guys came and they started talking to me. And essentially, they were doing creative transactions, buyer incentives. Now, I had already done a lot of closings representing buyers, so I knew this was being done by other developers. So I was like, yeah, I can do that, because I'm like a people pleaser. I'm an overachiever. I can get anything done. In 2 weeks, I had my first closing request, and I never took the time, nor did I make the time, to do any due diligence, to ask any questions, to ask for help. By the way, I'm surrounded by attorneys. My parents are attorneys. My friends are attorneys. Many of my mentors are attorneys. And yet, I didn't ask for help. Because I so believed that this guy is the answer to my struggle. Like, I don't have to be in this wall, this prison anymore, right? So 2 months later, it's Christmas Eve, 2007. Now, this year, my entire family descends into Miami for like a family reunion. So my aunties, my uncles, my cousins, my sister, the kids from Philadelphia, California, Houston. You get the picture? I come from a really big family. And they all come into Miami to celebrate the holidays. So it's 8:00 p.m. We've just had eggnog and Christmas music is playing, and we've just baked Christmas cookies to leave for Santa. We can smell the pine tree. The Christmas carols are playing. Kids are in a good mood, right? So it's 8:00 and I decide it's time to get the kids to sleep. So I go into their bedroom. They used to share a bedroom. And Maya was in her crib, and Kyler was in his toddler bed, and I was sitting on the glider. You guys remember those? And I'm sitting on the glider, and I'm singing to my children, because this is what I did every night. I sang the same lullaby that my parents used to sing to me every night. Does anybody want to hear that? What it was? आजकल मेरा क्या दिन हुआ तमाम. Like I sing it and it's still nostalgic. And as I'm singing to my children, thank you. As I'm singing to my children, I look down at my BlackBerry and there's an email that pops in. So the first question is, do you think anybody expects me to respond to an email at 8:00 on Christmas Eve? Oh, see, we're all women. We know. Yeah. I'm a working mother. And I'm a solopreneur. So I believe and expect myself to give my clients the best customer service, which meant immediate feedback, immediate response time. So I'm singing to my children, it's Christmas Eve, and I'm answering an email. And in the email reads one line and an attachment. And as I read that line, I was like, it was like a sucker punch. Didn't feel right. And I forward the email. I don't even open the attachment. Now, why do I forward this email so quickly, expecting somebody in my office will tell me if there's something different, something unusual, or disturbing? Well, I have a house full of relatives. It's almost Christmas morning. My kids are not yet sleeping and none of my presents are wrapped. Has anybody ever forwarded an email without actually reading it? Or maybe not opening the attachment? or trusting that somebody else will read it and tell you what's in it. Right? Like we've all done that. I'll tell you in a bit what happened with that email. So here's the thing. Pressure breeds bad decisions. So after about 15 months, I stopped working with this developer and I merged my practice with my father's, who's also an attorney. We don't even do transactional work anymore. We're doing litigation. We grow our practice by 1,200%. And in 2011, 4 years after I met this developer, 2 FBI agents showed up to my office. And it was scary. Has anybody ever dealt with the FBI? No, because it's, right, like nobody wants to deal with the FBI. But here's the thing, they operate off intimidation. And I didn't know that I could say to them, hey, can I take your card? And I'll call you back when I have an attorney with me. And shouldn't I know better? Like I went to a pretty good law school. I feel like I'm kind of smart. But I let them into my office and I used to have this circular table by my desk. And I sat there with them for 4 hours. And they grilled me. They showed me documents and emails and pictures, and I'm answering these questions, yes, no, as if I actually understood what happened 4 years earlier. Do any of us have that kind of memory? But see, I didn't understand the reach of the government, and I certainly was very naive. 2 years later, I got a grand jury subpoena for documents. Now, I believe I'm the records custodian. I'm the lawyer. They just want my files, but they're after the developer and the buyers and the realtors and the mortgage brokers. My files have already passed audit. I'm good. And I really believe I haven't done anything. Within 3 months, my attorney called me and he said, you're a target. And guys, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm a dirt lawyer. I'm a real estate lawyer. And once he explained it to me, I collapsed on his sofa and I was shaking uncontrollably. Because this was my whole life. Like, this was everything I had worked so hard for. And all I could think about is, I'm disgracing my parents. I'm disgracing my kids. I sit on a lot of boards in Miami and I thought, oh my gosh, my nonprofits that I work with are going to get affected. And what are people going to say? So in April 2014, I was indicted for 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 24 counts of bank fraud. I had made some bad decisions. So about 2 weeks later, my family called our Indian community to come to the house. You see, we didn't want people to gossip about it. And my parents were leaders in our community. So we called 50 of my closest aunties and uncles. Right? Like everyone's an auntie and uncle in our community. So everyone comes to the house on a Saturday night. And of course, we fed them samosas. And then we were all in the living room. And my dad was in the corner. And I was sitting on the sofa. My mom was here. And one of my uncles from the community was here. And my dad told everybody that I had been indicted 2 weeks earlier. And he's crying. And I'm crying. And my mom is hard as nails. She doesn't cry. And this uncle right here says, Beti, which in Hindi means daughter, one day you realize this is not happening to you. This is happening for you. Now, maybe you guys have heard this. I had never heard it until that point. And I didn't know what that was going to be yet. But it became a seed in the back of my mind. You see, all I could do in that moment was reframe and accept that this is happening. I had to own the truth. I had to recognize that there came a point where I was going to have to reframe this. And my uncle's words kept ringing, like, this is happening for me. This is happening for me. 4 months went by, and my attorney calls us into his office, my parents and I, for a hearing. Now, trial was set for like 4 months later, and we walked in thinking we're going to talk about trial prep, right? My testimony, exhibits, expert witnesses. And instead, my attorney, David, put together this entire presentation. He goes, Rashmi, if you go to trial, the government is going to have to prove their case. So they're going to put up all this evidence, and then we're going to put up our defense, and then they're going to put up their rebuttal. Any guess on what the rebuttal piece was? Yeah, the email. And he said, Rashmi, by the way, I've known David for like 20 years. We're friends. We live down the street from each other. His wife went to college with me. Our kids have been in plays together. Right? He looked, look, I know you. You didn't walk into this planning a crime. But here's the thing. If you go to trial, you're looking at 20 years. And you're going to lose. Like, you're going to miss all of it. You're going to miss your kids' whole life. And there's no appeal. And he said, you're going to have a coming to Jesus moment. Which, by the way, actually is funny because he's Jewish and I'm Hindu. And he said, listen, if you go to trial, the jury's going to get a lot of jury instructions, but let's talk about one of them. And we talked about willful blindness, right? Like, willful blindness means you can't pretend not to know what's happening around you. You can't put your head in the sand because not doing something is still doing something wrong. I'm going to say it again. Not doing something is still doing something wrong. He goes, as an attorney, you had a fiduciary duty to do more. As a leader, as a professional. So that evening, I took my son, who was 9, to Cheesecake Factory. And you see, he's my son that had read a ton, and I did not want him to Google my name and learn about what I did from anybody else. I knew he had to hear it from me. And we sat in these stools and we looked into each other's eyes, and I took his hands and I told him, Mommy has to plead guilty to a federal crime today. And we cried, and he asked me questions. Most importantly, Mommy, are you going to have to go away? And I didn't know that. I just said, I don't know. We'll find out. So I'd love you to think about right now, what's one thing in your life right now that you can reframe? Right? Like, I've been indicted. I had to reframe that this is happening. And I found a way to recognize, like, it's happening for me, yet I don't know what it is yet. I'm just going to keep that positive mindset. After I reframed, I recognized that I was sitting there having all this negative self-talk, like, what are people going to say about me? Who's going to stand up for me? Will people even be there for me? What's going to happen to my reputation? Am I actually going to ever come back from this? Because I was so stuck in ego. I was so stuck in the idea of all of my achievement and my self-worth was rooted in this thing. And now I had lost that thing. Would people even love me anymore? Had I disgraced my parents so much? How will I move on from this? And so I began to identify my constellation of stars, the people in my life that I could lean on, that would lift me up. And so, because I'm an overachiever, I made a list of people, like a spreadsheet. And one by one, I began to call every single one of them. It was almost 200 people, like elementary school friends, high school friends, law school friends, my kids' friends' parents, my kids' teachers, my running friends, politicians in Miami, nonprofit directors in Miami, managing partners of law firms in Miami, people that knew me at my core, that knew my history and character. And I would pick up the phone and I would call them, and I would, exactly like I've told you, I would tell them. And what I'll tell you is that before I picked up the phone and called them, I was so sure that every one of them would hang up on me, that they would shun me, that they would want to have nothing to do with me, because I had messed up. And the most incredible thing happened. And 182 letters were sent to the judge. And it was like I got eulogized before I died. Like, who gets that opportunity? And the thing is I didn't actually realize people loved me for me. And I had impacted people like in elementary school and high school that they still remembered. You see, I walked through shame. And I had spent my entire life believing that I can't show that side of me. Don't we all pretend like nothing's wrong? It's so much easier. But yet I walked through shame and found unconditional love in a way that I never, ever thought possible. And what I learned is that people are very forgiving of our humanity when we give them the chance. One of my friends said, Rashmi, you stood naked and exposed for the entire world to judge you, and we did. And we got to see ourselves in you. And we got to teach our kids this lesson, which is that we are all flawed humans, here to learn lessons. So have any of you been in a federal courtroom? Oh, one person, okay. Somebody back there, okay, a couple people. So they're long with very high ceilings and incredibly scary if you're the defendant. And I remember in June of 2015, I walked in and I walked up to that podium and the entire room was full of those 180 people there to love on me. People drove down from Charlotte, flew in from New York and Philadelphia and Houston, friends, family. And I stood up at that podium and I apologized to the judge, and I turned around and I apologized to my parents, and then I apologized to my community. And I promised to do better. And you see, on that day, when I was there to be sentenced, any other person would have said, what a day of failure. I would have said that about myself. But on that day, what I learned is that success for me is now defined by how many people I can touch and inspire every day. Because that room was full of people there loving me unconditionally as the judge sentenced me to a year and a day in prison. And when that happened, I collapsed on the ground. And I was shaking and crying hysterically. And it's not that I was scared for me, because I'm a survivor, I'm a fighter. I can get through anything. My grandfather did it, I can do it. But all I could think about was the children. What's going to happen to my kids? Like, who's going to love on them? But all I could do was surrender. You see, I had all these limiting beliefs. I was completely trapped in ego. And ego is something that we all know. What are people going to think about me? What will people say about me? What's going to happen to my reputation? I got to get the best job. But I also had all this fear, and I am a control freak. Okay? But control is a limiting belief. And if you ask my ex-husband, he'll tell you, like, I'm a control freak. And then judgment. For me, my limiting beliefs were these 4 things. But I knew I had to let go of them and I had to just surrender to the moment. Surrender to those limiting beliefs and let them go. And the morning of my surrender, which was August 17, 2015, I had like one wish, which was I used to be an avid runner. So I wanted to run at sunrise and pray with my family. So one of my happy places is Matheson Hammock Park. So I went at sunrise that morning. As you can see, my son didn't even come because he was so upset. You might be able to see that my dad's crying. And we prayed. And I was so scared. Like I've gone through a lot of things, right? I've been pretty strong my whole life, but I was entering a twilight zone. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't have any control over what I was going to eat, what I was going to wear, who would I be next to, would I see my kids, would I be okay? But all I could do was surrender to that moment. Because when we're in the struggle, instead of trying to control it all the time, if we just surrender to it, it frees us up. So yes, whoever said it, you did your homework. This was my inmate number, 051211104, and I was no longer Rashmi Airan. I was now a number. And the surrender process can only be described as dehumanizing. You get stripped, searched, everything gets taken from you. But you know what happened in that magical moment? As I lost my freedom, physical freedom, I gained complete freedom through this process. And I recognized that, wow, I had spent my whole life armoring up, putting a mask on, believing I had to be this thing to be loved. And through this journey, by telling people, by people writing me letters, by people showing up on my sentencing hearing, I found the freedom to be completely transparent and not hide all the time and not pretend anymore and just be me because actually people love me for me. And I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't or to be able to do something I couldn't. When I was in prison, I discovered two things that helped me to evolve. One is I discovered gratitude. Remember that picture I didn't remember even taking when they were little? So this is the day after Christmas in 2015. My kids came to visit me. And we would play board games together. They would buy me food from the vending machine. Fun fact, Chobani Flip had just come out. That was what I always wanted. And you know that I was not allowed to actually touch money. Only the kids could touch or visitors could touch dollar bills. And all they wanted to do was spend time with me, and we would play apples to apples, and they would hug me and love me and kiss me. And when the guard's clock would hit 3, Maya would grab me and say, "Mommy, please don't go." But I was so grateful that they would come visit me. And every night I would go to sleep in my room, in my bed. Oh, actually, let's go back to this. I wanted to say something. You know, orange is one of my brand colors, by the way, and orange is the new black. But I don't wear it because my prison color was safari green. So I have rid my entire wardrobe of safari green. Like I will never wear that again. I had to share because people always ask me, why is orange your brand color? So those of you that have watched Orange is the New Black, our cubes looked pretty similar, but we had bunks. And I slept on the top bunk. And you see that ledge next to the bed? I used to keep a gratitude journal right next to me. And every morning around 5:45, the guards would walk by and do count. And I would then wake up and flip on the nightlight. And the first thing I would do was I would open my gratitude journal and I would write in it. And I discovered that even in the hardest of moments, as I was away from my children, I could find gratitude. So these are the 2 pages I wrote around Christmas. And I wasn't going to be home for Christmas that year. I knew they were coming the next day to see me on the 26th, which is that picture we just saw. But you see, evolved and I recognized that if I can just have gratitude in every moment, I would find peace. I would find that freedom. And this was my act of courage every morning. And sometimes it doesn't feel good to take another step forward because it's just, we get stuck. We get paralyzed by the moment, by the struggle. But when we can act with courage and actually dare ourselves to do it, because it's a choice. So I spent about 5 months, I actually spent 10 days in downtown Miami. Some of you know that building in downtown Miami. I then spent 5 months in Coleman, which is about an hour north of Orlando. And then I was transported to county jail near Tampa. Now, there was another case that they asked me to testify in, and there's no federal jail there. So the government said, you got to sit in a county jail. Now, I've already spent 5 months in federal, and I have heard stories of county jail because when you get in trouble in the federal system, your punishment is you get sent to county. Like if you steal something and there's contraband or you get into a fight, that's your punishment. So I've already heard all these stories of what county jail is like, but I'm voluntarily choosing to go to county jail. Why? Because my attorney says that if I testify in this other case, there's a chance I could come home early and skip halfway house and skip house arrest. Well, that's a pretty good deal. So I get transported to county, but as I'm going to county, I'm already passing judgment on the women I'm about to go be with. Now, I'd spent 5 months in federal. I have friends there. I have a prison mom who takes care of me, who's taught me to crochet, all the things. But I'm going to county and I have literally started talking to myself about the women I'm about to go be with. And I was like, I don't belong with them. I'm an attorney. I'm educated. I'm not supposed to be there. And so I walk into this cube, and above me was a prostitute heroin dealer, and next to me was a homeless person who had been selling drugs, and above her, a 24-year-old meth dealer with a 4-year-old at home. And I spent 23 days cooking, eating, praying, crying, sleeping, getting them to work out with me. And I learned, how dare I pass judgment on these women? Because but for the grace of God, there go I. And we are all drops from the same ocean. We're all just humans, flawed, figuring it out every day. So one night, we were watching a movie. So they would have these movies that would come on, and there'd be a TV stuck to the corner, and there was a section where there were cold, hard metal chairs, and you would sit in them. And so the movie Burlesque comes on. Yeah, you guys all know this, right? With Cher, Christina Aguilera. Yeah, it's super fun dancing. So we all get up and we start dancing. Like we're finding joy in this moment. And we're dancing and we're singing and we're having fun. Wishing we looked like Christina Aguilera, actually. And then we go back to our cube and one of the girls says, hey, don't you know how to Bollywood dance? And I was like, that's like a trick question because every Indian knows how to Bollywood dance, or at least we like to try. So after I testify in county jail, I go back to federal prison 2 weeks later. Now, by the way, I learned a lot of prison hacks when I was in prison. Like, they're really fun, but we're going to talk about one of them, which is I learned how to make chocolate truffles. Now, you might wonder, how do you make chocolate truffles in prison? Well, you might get a friend in the kitchen to bring you some stuff that she's not supposed to, like cream and butter. And I kind of took things from the chow hall that I wasn't supposed to. And then I did buy a few things from commissary. And my bunkie taught me how to make chocolate truffles. They didn't look as good as us. But I knew that on February 5th, there was a hearing at 9 a.m. to determine whether the judge would grant me early release. Okay? So February 4th, I decide, well, I can't come home empty-handed. My mom has taught me right. So I'm going to make chocolate truffles for my kids. So I make them. I put them under the bed on this thing that we all used to share to dry. And on February 5th at 9 o'clock was the hearing. And my attorney, David, said, okay, call at 10 and I'll know by then. So at 10 o'clock, I go over to these payphones that used to be like on the wall, right? Payphones. I would, pick up the phone, dial all these numbers to get out. And I call David, and the first thing he says is, "You're going home!" Yeah. And that's how it felt. Like, I couldn't even believe it. It was like, I get to go home. So the next call I made was to my parents. Now, my parents knew that there was a hearing. So my mom picks up the phone, and I go, "Mom, I'm coming home. Dad can leave now," because it was 5 hours away. And you know what her response was? "He left an hour ago." Like, they knew. They had that kind of faith and trust in the universe. So I gave all the things away that I had bought from commissary. I prepared. And as I left at 3:00 and I walked out of the doors, my dad was there, and I ran into his arms and hugged him. And I had told my mom, "Don't tell the kids I'm coming home." So they were supposed to come the next day to visit me, and I wanted to surprise them. So I drove, actually, I changed in like the first turnpike stop I could get to, like tore off prison clothes. My mom had sent clothes for me, put them on. And as I got home, my mom first did a little prayer ceremony with my aunts and my outside, which is what we do. And I came in and I surprised myself. And this is a biddy.
Now you see. Did it hurt, Manu?
So that was when I transformed and I started. I realized that as I had told this story, I've healed, and more people are learning and benefiting from this courageous process that I went through that I didn't even realize I was going through at the time. And so we can all apply the RISE process. All we have to do is reframe, identify, surrender, and then evolve. Because when the panic erupts and you just want to escape and move on, because you don't just rise above, right? Like, don't we keep hearing rise above, move on? But when you do that, you're just escaping and not growing. So when my dad was 12, he had just finished reading Gandhi's autobiography. My mom's all embarrassed that I have this picture up of her. And in Gandhi's autobiography, Gandhi shares this really embarrassing, humiliating moment. So on this day, my dad's 12 and he comes home from school, and his dad, who by this time had fallen very ill because the conditions in jail were so bad, he says to my dad, "Let's go for a bike ride." So my dad comes from this tiny little village in India near Delhi called Bedi. There's no paved roads. So my grandfather sits in the carriage next to my dad's bike. My dad gets on his bike and they start riding around on these dirt roads of Bedi, and they end up at this nearby pond. They get off the bikes. My dad picks fruit from the nearby tree. And as they sit and they start talking, my dad says to my Dadaji, "I don't understand. Why would Gandhi share this really embarrassing, humiliating moment for the entire world to judge him forever?" And my Dadaji says, "Because that's the point, son. When you go through life's hard lessons, you have a responsibility to share it so that others can learn and never have to go through what you did and went through." I am my grandfather's legacy. But what will be your legacy? Each of you here at Miami-Dade College can do something every day to commit not only to your own legacy, but to the college's legacy. What will you dare to do? What will you surrender to? What will you evolve to do today and create your legacy? So what's my legacy? Well, I hope that when my kids are fighting the fight or some sort of revolution, I hope they think of their great-grandfather my Dadaji. And when they are trying something new and are scared, I hope they think of my parents, their grandparents. But I hope when they make those bad decisions, and it's so much easier to escape and hide and just move on, I hope they remember to apply the rights process, to reframe, identify, surrender and evolve, and recognize that they're not in it alone. That not only are they there for each other, but we're all here for them. And that they can rise together. That's the legacy I can live with. Thank you so much. I'm Rashmi Airan.